Well, thank you guys for coming. Really appreciate it. And I just want to start off with a word of prayer, and then I'll kind of let you know what we're going to go over tonight, and hopefully it'll be fun and interactive. And I just love being on the same page with you guys as far as what we're doing and why we're doing it. So let's pray. Oh, by the way, the youth are in the gym because of the storm, so might have some noise to deal with. Lord, I just thank you for these parents. I thank you for the sacred responsibility you've given them. I just pray that you give them wisdom and insight and just an amazing ability to lead their kids well and raise their kids up. And us too, God, please help us to do the best that we can to invest in these young people and help their lives be extraordinary for you. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So I appreciate what you guys do. I have a 6-year-old. If you've seen me preach on the weekend, I usually mention that. And the other day, actually yesterday morning, he got up in the morning and he asked my wife if he could have an ice cream bar for breakfast. And she said no. And then he goes, well, can I just have one of those little candies? And she said yes. And I go, there's this advanced negotiating tactic where you ask for something that's way too big in order to get the no so that you can ask for what you really want and they'll give you the yes. Did he just pull that on you? And she goes, you know what? I think he did. And so I'm going, holy cow, I am in for it when he grows up. And so God bless you for raising teenagers, because it's tricky. And it's like the negotiation, the relationship, the role between adapting to a coach in their life and a parent and a friend and a disciplinarian and all that stuff. So I just really respect and appreciate what you guys are doing, and we love you. Let me just ask you, what is one of your favorite things about parenting a teenager?
Look when they get something, catch on.
The epiphany, right? We have
That smile.
Yep, I love it. That would be one of mine too. I love that.
When they take on something at home without you asking them to do it.
Oh.
like when Heather decides she's going to make dinner, and she's like, well, what if I did this and this and that? Yes, sure, that sounds good.
Do it.
Yeah.
Praise God.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What else? You like talking with background music, so it's dramatic.
A lot of times it makes me remember, I don't know, it helps me practice empathy, because then I remember what I went through or what I did, and I don't know, so it'll bring me back to when I was a kid and try to relate and then put myself in their shoes, so it gives me a constant ability to practice empathy in my life, and it's not that hard, but still, it keeps it fresh, so.
Yeah. Yep. That's good. What else?
I like the difference in the conversations we can have now.
Yeah.
How it's like, whoa, you really are a real person, and we're talking about fun things still, but serious things, and you understand this, and you understand the humor, the older humor.
Yeah.
It's fun when they get that too.
Yeah.
I enjoy that a lot.
Oh man, it's like you watch them and 1 minute they're trying to give each other wedgies, and the next minute they want to know about what does the Trinity really mean? You're just like, okay, whoa. So I love it. Any others? Well, our heart at the youth group, at the core of it, is to help teenagers grow into the men and women that God made them to be. Everything we do comes back to that. And tonight, for the first half, we're just going to talk about some of our philosophy and strategy for how we make that happen on a regular basis. And you guys are welcome to ask questions or get clarification anytime you want to. But I always like to take the opportunity to just explain kind of the process. And then for the second half, we'll talk about the backpacking trip. And so if your kids are planning on going on that, it would be great to hear more about that. If they're not, then you can feel free to head out and you won't need to worry about that time. But because we're doing a backpacking trip, it's more involved than just a normal summer retreat. So that's why I've got the video going so parents can check out some of the stuff we're talking about. And one of the big things that goes underneath everything we do in our events and our process is communicating with you guys. So is everybody on our email list, our Facebook page? I think you guys are. Are you guys on all that? Okay. Are you on that, Annie?
I'm not on Facebook.
Okay. Are you on the email though?
I think so.
Okay.
I've gotten emails from you before, so.
Okay, yeah, then you're good. So I try to communicate as much as possible. I know sometimes organizations, it's empty. I know sometimes organizations will email to the point where we totally ignore them, and I suppose I probably cross that line sometimes, but we would rather over communicate and let you know what's going on. Keep in mind when we're giving you information about events, especially big events. So this is kind of a phenomenon in youth ministry. It's easier to process middle schoolers than high schoolers. And my theory about that is that I think in middle school, the parents are still like, okay, I'll help you out, I'll do stuff for you. And then all the paperwork gets done, everything gets paid, they're all checked off. And the high schoolers, they're like, you need to start figuring this stuff out yourself. And the high schoolers totally forget. So what? I was supposed to sign something? That doesn't sound right. So it's really helpful, and I think that process is good of putting responsibility in their lap, but it's really helpful to be like, hey, did you sign up for the retreat? Hey, do we need to pay anything? Like, hey, kind of keep your hands on it a little bit, because it helps me out a lot when we're processing. Oh, by the way, this is Donna. This is our wonderful admin for the youth group. So she helps me with all the paperwork stuff. Another thing is that I always love like doing coffee with parents or lunch with parents or things like that. So, and I will pay. So if you want to just hang out, just to get to know me, get to know you, and connect and hear more about your family and more about your background, and that means a lot to me. So if you ever want to take me up on that, I would love to do that. So just going to go over kind of the main points of what we do on a regular basis. And some of you know about these things. Some of your kids are part of these things, but I don't know if you've heard described like what's actually going on behind the scenes, what the purpose of it is. So the first thing is the core team. The core team is our youth leadership team. We call it the core team because when you give youth the title of leader, weird things happen. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. What? I'm a leader? That means I get to go boss people around, right? Like instantly. So we call it the core team. And what we do in this youth group is, as much as possible, have the youth run it for themselves. Plug them in everywhere we can plug them in. And sometimes, I would say, yeah, sometimes they don't do as well as adults at different things, but we'll take that hit in order to empower them and raise them up and give them legitimate responsibilities. One of our best youth leaders that just signed up earlier this year came from a youth group where the adults did everything. That was the model. Like the adults did everything and the youth didn't have to worry about it. And he said it was exhausting and overwhelming and the adults are like burning out. And he loves the way we do it. First of all, because more happens with more youth, and secondly, he's like, I can't believe what these youth are actually capable of. Like, it's incredible, when they step up, what they can actually do. And so we have 4 teams, once they join the core team, they get placed in one of these 4 teams. So there's media arts, that is videos, graphics, Instagram, social media. We have worship, games team, and hospitality. So they all get put on one of those teams. And all those teams have an adult involved, but the adult's job is to help the youth do the work, except for media arts. That doesn't have an adult. But that has Heather, so that's the same thing, right? Basically. Now here's something really important about the core team. It is an open invitation to anyone who wants to join. And that is intentional. I've done it many different ways over the years. I've seen other youth groups do it many different ways. And the reason we do that is because you just never know what God has in store for someone's life. And I've seen over and over and over again people that came in and they're told knuckleheads and they're like, what are you doing? And they show up and set up chairs and then suddenly they're learning and growing, and then they want to take on more responsibility, and before you know it, it's like one of your best leaders. And I've had many leaders that a lot of groups would not have taken any time with. At the same time, it's very messy because people have this concept in their heads that like the leadership team should be, the highest character kids, and they should have this long checklist of things that they're doing in their life, and they should live up to the standard. And it is more about having a group of people where they're connected and we're growing together. And sometimes it is very messy. Sometimes it is like, man, do you know what that kid's doing at school? And they're part of the core team, and what's up with that? And I'm like, yeah. And they're showing up and they're learning, and they got some rough edges, but we're gonna work through that. And so it is an open invitation to start. It's not an open invitation to stay. So if you think about in athletics, it's kind of like open tryouts, but the best performers rise to the surface and are given more responsibility. And it's just a really natural thing. I mean, any leader that has a group of people, you start to get a sense for who you can lean on and who can carry the weight, and who you just can't give important responsibilities to because they won't come through. And so there is a sense of, everybody can come, but there's things they can do to be asked to step down, or there's things they can do where they just kind of are there and are not really involved much because they're not able to come through. And sometimes they're just really busy, or they're taking on a lot of stuff outside a youth group, and that plays into it too. But the core team gets the most attention from me. And I told the whole youth group that literally the first day I came. I try not to pick favorites. I try not to, shun some kids and bring some kids close. But the reality is people who are serving next to me get a lot more of my time. And the people who can show up get a lot more of my time. And the people that come to trainings get a lot more of my, it just is what it is. So if anybody ever says like, well, Josh always spends time with those people, it's probably because those people show up. And it's just a natural thing. And I let them know, I'm like, hey, my time is available to all of you. You don't have to be on, anytime a student ever wants to meet with me or needs prayer, I've met with students on a regular basis that weren't part of the core team. It's not like a requirement to spend time with me. It's just a natural thing that if you're part of that, if you're involved in that, you're going to get more time from the leadership. Any questions at this point? No? All clear?
Different teams, you make an effort to, say, rotate sometime on this hospitality team, sometime on the
Yes.
worship team, and try to get an experience in all of them?
Yes. So the way we do that is actually digging a little deeper. So when people start out, and we need to reset this soon, but we have what's called a gifts matrix. And the way it works is we have 4 boxes, and there is, I'm good at this, I'm not good at this, I love this, and I don't love this. And then we have a list of responsibilities, and we have them put that in the box. So, for instance, they might say, I'm really interested in prayer ministry, but I'm not good at it. And so we think, okay, there's a passion there, we just need some training. Or like, I'm interested in announcements and I'm good at. Maybe this is someone we can plug in immediately. Or, there's like the people that are good at running fundraisers, but they hate it. And, some of you know what that is. So we get that sometimes, like, I'm amazing at it, but, I've had a few of those, and they're like the only one who marked fundraiser on the whole team. So I'm like, it's like, if we have to. So we start with that, and I tell them, experiment. So they basically have like an open invitation to switch teams whenever they want to try stuff. The only thing I ask is that they talk to me and we figure out like if it makes sense, to try different things. And then we were going to have a leadership retreat a couple months ago, but we had that COVID scare, so we had to cancel it. But those leadership retreats are times when we'll mix and match, and we had 5 groups, we consolidated to 4. We just keep massaging our process and seeing what makes sense. But one of the really amazing things about this is like when the group grows, when you see youth getting baptized on the weekend, when you see youth jumping in all over the church to help lead, to be on the board, to be on the worship team, a lot of that just stems from them taking ownership of the youth group and taking ownership of the church and stepping into leadership positions. And I mean, people, when we had that baptism a few weeks ago, people came up to me and they're like, great job, and you're doing so good. And I'm like, honestly, it's the youth, like it's the core team that are stepping up and bringing their friends and doing really cool stuff. So it's a scary philosophy, because if the youth don't take ownership, it goes really bad. Nothing happens. But this is a special group of kids, so I'm very proud of them. This summer, actually we started today, we add a leadership intensive, which is kind of like a miniature internship sort of a thing. And so they'll get like a certificate at the end, but it's more in-depth leadership projects, leadership reading, some theology reading, and we're meeting weekly for a couple hours. I'm bringing in some experts for different areas that they want to learn and grow in. So we've got Isaac, who wants to be a pastor, so he's going to be preaching this summer, and we're working with him on that. Josiah wants to do videos, so Carter's going to help him out with some video stuff, and we just want to take it to the next level with some of these youth. So excited about that. Went really well. Secondly is just a little about our weekly service. And first off, you're always welcome to visit. Parents are always welcome to come check things out, especially if there's a topic that you're kind of like, what's going on? I've taught on creation, evolution, I taught on sexuality, I've taught on dating, some things like that. And usually if I sense that it might be a topic that you would want to speak into, I'll send out an email letting everybody know. And I find that most of the complaints I get are from people who don't come and listen. Most of the parents that come and listen are like, oh. First of all, they'll hear, especially like for a dating series, they'll hear me say over and over again, work with your parents on this, talk with your parents, partner with your parents. Your parents are a big part of this, so constantly like telling them to partner with you. But just to know, that's an open invitation. It is designed to be a worship service for youth. And that's important. So we have youth worship, We have games, things that are engaging and fun. The way to a youth's heart is through their feet and through their mouth. So you feed them and you play with them, and they will love you oftentimes. And that's what the youth do. Every time I say that, they're like, yep, feed us, play with us. Youth-focused teaching. Every other week we have community groups, so we break up guys and girls, junior high and high school. We have 4 community groups. And so as we get bigger, this last year we've topped out at around 45 or 50. We also want to be smaller at the same time and have groups where they're together with their group of peers, and also groups where everybody's worshiping together and everybody's learning and growing together. In the summer, we'll do sermon groups. In the school year, we will do junior high in groups, high school in lesson, and then we'll swap every week, which has a ton of benefits. We went to that format last year, and it is glorious. So helps with adult leaders, helps with all sorts of stuff. It also helps me teach more specifically to middle schoolers when just middle schoolers are here, or high schoolers, so that I can, and I almost always teach the same thing, but every once in a while there's some things that I'll kind of rub some of the edges off or cut that story out or something like that for the middle schoolers. So we try to give as much freedom as possible. So a lot of areas of a youth's life are very structured, and they should be. That's a good thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing. But we want the youth group to be a place where they can, as much as possible, just be youth. Just be with their friends, just hang out and be real and be authentic. Now, obviously, there's limits, and there's borders, and sometimes we need to step in. But it comes across as a very relaxed group because of that, and that's intentional. A lot of youth groups have an agenda to get kids to open up. It's a very common thing, and I teach our leaders that our agenda is to make kids feel valuable first. And I've seen it where and I'm not necessarily even saying this is a bad thing, like other people do it and that's fine, but I've seen youth leaders go up to kids and their whole thing is like, what are you going through, and how's your heart, and what's it, and sometimes kids are just like, what? Like, what's going on? I don't want to talk about that stuff. But when your agenda is like, I like you, I think you're valuable and important enough to spend some time with, that can lead to some really extraordinary things in their lives. And it's one of the things that youth are starving for right now, because more and more and more, the adults in their lives have an agenda around their performance. So it's always been a thing, but back in the day, teaching was more about empowering kids, investing in kids. Sports was more about developing their character. There was a lot of things that were about, hey, serving kids. Now teaching's about getting the grades, getting the performance. Coaches, it's crazy how far it's gone to performance-based. And so what happens is all these teenagers have relationships with adults that are based on their performance in life. And they have less and less and less of adults that are like, I just think you're valuable because of who you are, and that's it. And that's, I think, an area that the church can provide almost better than any other organization right now. Save families and parents. I mean, you guys are always the number one source of that. So, but it helps to just have a casual environment, where we can hang out and let them be kids. Rachel Visser, who is wonderful, just one of the best adult youth leaders I've ever had. She writes all our curriculum for community groups, and so it's always based on the sermon before. And here's the other thing. Growing and reaching youth and finding youth that don't know Jesus, you guys are a big part of that too. So I love it when parents think along those lines. Who are the kids coming over to spend time with your kid? And you're a lot of times giving rides and orchestrating their schedules and things like that. And you can say, hey, why don't you invite so-and-so and see if they want to come to youth group? Or when we have the slip and slide, or when we have some sort of event, that might pique a non-Christian's interest, just be like, hey, bring them, load them up in the car. And that is hugely helpful to us. And what's also helpful to me personally is if you know that your family can bring some students that don't know Jesus, let me know, and I will add an invitation to the end of my sermon. You just never know. You just never know when someone's ready to respond to Jesus. And so I will do that for one kid that shows up. That sometimes I do it anyways, just in case. But if you are planning to have someone who doesn't have a church background, just shoot me an email or a text and say, just letting you know, and if they show up, and we can kind of partner together in that, just so that even if they show up once, we know they heard the gospel, and who knows what God will do. Any questions about our weekly service?
Based on the sermon that was on Sunday?
No, so since we have sermon groups every other week, it's our sermon, and then the curriculum expounds on whatever our youth sermon is. And what was I going to say? I was just going to say something about that. It escapes me all of a sudden. You said, I don't know, maybe it'll come back to me. We've had core team members helping with the community groups. I think we're going to stop doing that for the junior high for a little while. Some of you know why. But the reason is that broadly speaking, there's two categories of kind of leader serving roles. One of them is influence, and at the highest levels, that's like leading worship, maybe giving devotionals or even speaking, and leading community groups. And a lot of the other stuff is not as much an influence position as those things. And so, especially with the junior high community groups, we're probably not going to have core team helpers in there for a while, because for a couple of reasons. We just want high schoolers to spend time with their peers, and we just got burned on it. So there's that too. And I still can't remember what I was going to say. So the third thing I want to talk about is our events, kind of broad overview. So in a normal year, which I don't even remember what that's like, that was so long ago. But in a normal year, the plan is that we will send the junior high to Tadmor, which is an incredible camp. In fact, ORPAC was thinking about sending their youth to Tadmor also. But the ORPAC youth leader just left for Idaho, so I don't know if that plan has changed or not. We will definitely do it in middle school. Our DS's church sends their teens to Tadmor, so it's actually a thing in the Nazarene denomination. But and then for high school, we're doing a road trip. And there are a couple of reasons for this. One of them is we want to have this progression where when they're in kids ministry, they're looking forward to what they'll get to do in middle school, and when they're in middle school, they'll look forward to what they have to do in high school, and when they're in high school, we'll literally do something different every year for 4 years. And as you know, youth's attention span, they're like, doing the same things over and over again, just isn't the same as it was even 5 or 10 years ago. And so we're just looking for ways to build into the strategy something new, something exciting, something fresh. About every 4 years is NYC. If you don't know what that is, it's a huge national conference with the Nazarene Church. It's I mean, it's second to none. There is no youth conference that is better than NYC that I've ever seen. And so it's something that a lot of youth plan years in advance to attend. It's expensive, it's really expensive, but there is a lot of money in our church that supports NYC, I discovered. So, I've been doing this for about 21 years now, and I almost never have a student say, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it and do the best I can and be part of the fundraisers and send out the letters and ask my family and see if God comes through. I don't think I've ever seen someone do that didn't eventually come up with whatever they needed. So I've seen a lot of people go, oh, it costs that, I'm not going. And that doesn't work out too well. So NYC every 4 years, and a youth-specific mission trip is typically about every 4 years. Now, the church will possibly do more mission trips than that, but typically they're just family mission trips where everybody's doing it together. So the Hawaii trip is a youth-specific mission trip where there's adults going, but a lot of the focus is on youth. And that's an every 4-year thing. We have rescheduled it 3 times now because of COVID, but typically it will be a spring break thing. So that trip is full right now, but that will come down the pipe every few years. It's a great opportunity. I have some parents that are going on that trip and they just wanted to do a mission trip with their kids. And that's a great opportunity to do that, to jump in and do something like that. Over winter camp, COVID allowing, we will start doing Washington Family Ranch, which is the biggest, most incredible camp in the Northwest, bar none. It's literally cost $40 million to build. So it's like a theme park. And the reason we do that for winter camp is because it's very expensive. If you go for a week to Family Ranch, it's like $700. If you go for a weekend for winter camp, it's like $120, which is way more manageable for most families. And there's some other Nazarene churches in the state that go to that winter camp, so it's a chance for us to join up with them and hang out with them. There's no snow there, which will make some people sad, but we're going to look to do a snow event or a day on the tubing hill to make up for that. So, any questions about that?
So you said there's other groups that will be there with you guys?
Yes.
Most likely.
Yes. There.
Is the program all together then? So it's not you running winter camp, it's Washington Family running winter camp? Oh, okay.
Exactly. Yep. I've been talking with, I think it's Salem First, who's been going for a while, and they really like it. I've worked with Family Ranch in the past. I've actually done a lot of camps with cohort of churches, and when it goes well, it's really fun. It's really cool. That being said, one of the amazing things about Tadmor and Family Ranch is that they have a staff. It's huge that they have a staff, because that means they run games, they run food, they run all these different things, and we can focus on showing up, spending time with our kids. You can spend, we will spend more time with the youth at winter camp and summer camp than almost all the Wednesdays combined for the rest of the year. So for us to be able to sit back and just spend time with them, it's part of the reason we're doing a road trip, because it's just time on the road, hang out and laugh and get to know each other is golden. So, any other questions about that? We have a lot of smaller events throughout the year, and all of that stuff is planned by the core team. It's all the youth. And also the themes for Wednesday night sermons are planned by the youth. I ask them things like, what are youth going through? What do youth want to hear about? What's God doing in your life, or books that speak to you that you'd like us to teach on? It's all comes back to their ideas, their brainstorming, their friends. I think it helps, I'm 40 years old, which is ancient in youth ministry years. And that's what really helps me, continue in youth ministry, is that I don't have to stay up to date with everything that's going on because they do so much of the planning. I just empower them. And it's interesting because in the manual, the Nazarene manual, we're required to have basically like a board of youth or a group of youth. And they have like an authority. It's really a cool thing. I've never seen anything like it before. Because our core team has come up with some kind of controversial things here and there, not very often, but here and there. And I've talked to Pastor RJ about, and sometimes he'll say, you know what? Unless it's like a major thing, we're going to respect their authority and just go with it and take a hit. And I've never heard of that before, but I think it's amazing that they can carry a legitimate responsibility and position in the church. So a lot of those events, I just sent out the summer calendar. A lot of times I'll send out emails with registration links. They're usually in Planning Center. You can get the Planning Center app on your phone and register for events. Any events that need permission slips is a one-time a year thing. The permission slip is good from January to December. But I will tell you, and I'm pretty sure I wrote this into the permission slip, that you need to read the description of the events that you're signing up for. Because most of the problems with you getting mad at me are if you're surprised by something. And I work hard to make sure that that's in the description so you're not surprised by it. That's why it's there. If your kid is afraid of heights and we have a zip line, just let me know and I'll make it so that the kids aren't going, come on, do it, and I can kind of make it cool and not awkward and help them out. But you only need to renew that once a year. So typically our first big event's like the lock-in party that you need it for, and then I have it on record. But the cool thing is it's on my phone. You don't have papers around. You don't have, social security numbers and stuff like that. It's just, if a kid gets hurt, I can access it. We can take them to get help. So, any questions about that? Sweet. You can always ask me about scholarship stuff. I usually talk about for the big events, but some families, if there's a $10 or $20 event and you might just be a little tight, then talk to me. Don't ever keep your kid at home because of a money issue. I had one friend at my last church, and he was in construction. So literally one day he would donate just $1,000 to the scholarship fund. He'd just write a check and give it to me. The next day it was can we get a scholarship we can't, when the accounts were high, he was bawling. When they were low, they were food please. So that's always available. We have some support there.